We're back with another Taco Tuesday. Unfortunately, I missed last week because I'm in Virginia right now on a business trip. So you know, finally kind of got done for the day, but I think we've got a lot of taco. I mean, we have a full buffet from our punk ass POTUS, Donald J. Trump. Hopefully everyone had a great weekend, you know. Big turnout with the No Kings protests. So that was amazing. I think we got, you know, we actually, well, we're getting into percentages of the U.S. population. I think they were saying like, uh, at the conservative estimates are 5 million over 2,100 protests nationwide turned out. Um, so they're saying like, I mean, it's in the percentage points of the U.S. population, whereas Donald Trump got a percentage of the people that happen to be in the nearby public parking lots in DC to, come on and over to his the military parade, which kind of sucks because that was supposed to be 250 years of the U.S. Army, um, which you know got turned into his birthday celebration, and he basically slept through most of it. So, um, but like always with Trump, we have a lot to cover. There's a lot to go over. Oop. And yeah. Hey, what's up, Dean? I got to give a shout out to Dean Blundell today. He got a shout out from Heather Cox Richardson in her letters from an American, um, which I thought super cool, man. Like Heather Cox Richardson is one of the inspirations why I even started a Substack. I started reading her back during the pandemic. So yeah, but like it's hard to pin down the biggest taco, but I'm gonna give it to uh Trump fleeing the G7 before Zelensky got there. Dean had a great write up on it this today. Definitely go check out his Substack. Um, Basically for the rundown, so for those of you who don't know, like the G7 is supposed to be the biggest democratic economies. It's an economic forum in the world. That's why China is not a part of it. Russia used to be a part of it because they're supposedly, ostensibly, they were a democracy, even though Putin was sort of running the show. And the reason they got booted from it and went from the G8 to the G7 was the annexation of Crimea. Um, so for those of you like who aren't aware of what happened there, because really this war like the Ukrainian war started back in 2014. So Crimea used to be part of Russia, and Khrushchev during the Soviet era gave it to Ukraine as a gift. And a lot of that was sort of just it was a gesture of goodwill because during like pretty much since Peter the Great, Ukraine has suffered under what's called ostensibly called Russification. And under Russification, they tried to wipe out Ukrainian culture, like their language, um, customs. They referred to Russia or Ukraine as Little Russian. You kind of saw similar things going on with the UK and Ireland. So it's a similar kind of thing. Now, and the Ukrainian language that we have today is actually a recreation from what poets they recreated the language back in the 19th century. So it's not like it's a recreated language passed down through oral tradition and what little was saved of it. Because again, Russification almost wiped all that out. But Khrushchev gave Crimea to Ukraine. So when Ukraine became independent from when it became a independent country from the Soviet Union, Crimea went with it. And so when Putin annexed it, that was really the start of this war that's going on right now in Ukraine. It started back in 2014. And because of that, they were booted from the G8. Now, here's the thing: Justin Trudeau was not the prime minister of Canada at that time, as much as Trump likes to claim. He came in and a few months later in 2015. Barack Obama, yes, was president, but it was a vote by all the members in response to Russia basically doing such a, like, um, basically breaking with the Geneva Convention and being an aggressor and just grabbing territory. So just a few facts clean up there, right? But that really wasn't the worst of it. The worst of it was Donald Trump went to the G7, and this is after all the 51st state, all the shenanigans, all the crap that he's done towards Canada, and gets up there in front of Mark Carney and then basically starts spouting Russian talking points for the Kremlin. Saying like, "Well, if I was Putin, I would be upset. I'd be mad too." And you got to wonder, like, is he really a Russian asset, or is he just so dumb that a Kremlin spokesperson or Putin will just kind of complain to him on the phone, and then Trump is just that guy who picks it up uncritically and then just spouts it off, right? Oh yes, I'm very mad at the rest of them, and they kicked me out, and that's my bad Russian accent, English voice. And Trump is, oh yeah, no, I totally get it, Vladimir. Oh yeah, no, I'll tell Carney. Yeah, you know. In fact, I'm going to tell them and on the camera, and I'm going to say I don't like Putin either, and I don't understand like why they have a leaf on their flag, and I've never been a big fan of hockey. I'm going to make sure they know that they need to, they need to play basketball, and no one likes hockey. I mean, at that point, you've insulted the host country as much as you possibly could. You might as well just go ahead and insult everything there is to insult about Canada. Um, so, just say you don't like Rick Moranis at this point and just take it from there, So, like, just go down the list and start insulting all of, I don't like Brian Adams and I don't like Mike Myers and, you know, like, I don't, I don't understand this whole why you don't want to be the 51st state thing. I'm surprised he didn't bring that back up again. So, but apparently everything he said was rambling and incoherent. He, of course, he gave nothing to the world, to that economic forum. I think the one thing they were going to discuss was maybe with the UK and Starmer, and they were going to, talk about a potential trade agreement, which, again, we do not have an updated trade agreement with the UK. We only have a memorandum of understanding, which is a non-binding, just, it's a piece of paper that says, oh yeah, if we ever get to any kind of agreement, it's going to kind of look like this, right? And then there's some companies in the UK that have an exception with their imports coming over here, but that basically screws American companies because anything they import, they have to go by the tariff. So it's yeah, like, fantastic. Um, and I think he ended up dropping whatever he was holding, and then Stormer had to help him or pick it up. So, and there was rumors that he apparently smelled really bad. I know Adam Kinzinger's talked about that. And that he wears, I mean, the rumor is he wears adult diapers, and he's has incontinence problems because of all the basically Sudafed and kind of, whatever drug of choice he's ingesting. That's allegedly. It's and I think that's might be the case because like you can sometimes reason I'm inclined to believe it is when you ever hear him speak sometimes he's um he he sniffles a lot. He's always kind of, you know, and like his sinuses are constantly running. So there's definitely some kind of issue there going on. But um but yeah, he basically bugged out or a day early and before Zelensky arrived to talk to the rest of the G7 and scuttle on back to Washington. And then, of course, he was tweeting like mad, trying to cover it up because I think Macron said he was going to deal with the Iran situation with Israel. And then, he vehemently denied that and, threw some shots at France because, again, why not? You know, I'm surprised he hasn't thrown shots at everybody in the G7 at this point and just embarrassed the US even further. So, um, but yeah, I mean, he probably said that to Macron, some BS throwaway, and Macron just repeated it. And Trump, no, I didn't say that because he's famous for that. He'll even I don't I never said that. It's like, well, here's a video evidence of you actually saying it. Oh, I don't remember that. I don't remember. So like, yeah. So Trump chickening out, G7. That's got to be the winner for this past weekend because he did show up to his you know, he did show up to his wannabe dictator parade, which I got to tell you, after watching the clips of it, I loved it. I loved it. You know, I cannot confirm this, but I'm pretty sure the army gave him the biggest middle finger they possibly could because the entire thing that they did looks like just like it was the bare minimum. It looked like when I would see guys that I work with in aviation um that didn't really want to do a job and they slowed things down or they purposely did just close to the bare minimum so they wouldn't get in trouble. They had some wiggle room if you wanted to take them to a shop steward. But I mean, there was no dress uniforms. There was no actual parade. Everybody was in camis. None of them looked like pressed. They weren't starched all the hell. It was just like they basically just said, "Yeah, just hit with an iron a couple times and going out there. We'll march down the street." Veterans know what I'm talking about, you know. Um, so the guy carrying the drone above his head. Oh man, that did it for me. I love that. Part of me wonders, like, if they said, "Oh, we don't have any batteries for it," just carry it above your head, whatever. And nobody cares. I mean, is it embarrassing on the world stage? I mean, sure, but what isn't at this point for America? So I mean, but I think subtly the message was clear that, and that was the military's way of just saying, okay, there, want to be dictator, you can go f yourself, you know, and that's what a lot of people don't really understand with the federal government is, you know, they're not, these people aren't just automatons. They're not going to just do whatever you say to tell them to do. I mean, we're Americans. We'll do that to a degree, but we also have this sort of independent streak where we'll just tell you to go to hell, but we'll do it subtly. We'll do a half-assed job, you know? So, yeah. Um, so Donald Trump took a L this weekend, which, I mean, he should, like, honestly, he would have been better off just canceling it due to rain, and then making up some BS about, like, you know, oh, well, I wouldn't want to do that to the troops, like, so yeah, we're gonna move the celebration indoors. We're gonna have a tribute to the army, and like instead of like, and that blunts the No Kings protest. But he went ahead and did it anyway. I'm actually surprised he even went to the G7. Um, Personally, I mean, if I'm just riffing, I don't even know if he's fully in charge anymore. It really doesn't seem like he is. It seems like it's because I go back to everything that the right accuses the left of is usually a confession. It's projection and confession. And so all this Sleepy Joe and people were handling him, like was Biden even running the government? Was he even in charge? I honestly think that's going on with Trump at this point. Um, and kind of what sold it for me was I think Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff, is running things. Um, like what sold me on that was when he was talking about, oh, well, they're going after the cooks and the farm laborers. Like we need those people. Like no, we gotta adjust that. I think that was Trump how he really felt, and I think it just kind of dawned on him that that was happening. I think he's so far out of the loop that it's like, oh, we're doing that? No, that's stupid. Why would we do that? And so he said that, and some other people were like, okay, well, yeah, we're going to do that because the business class really wants to have that. And then Stephen Miller wrestled it back. And that's when you got this, we're going to do blah, 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 blah on that tweet that sounded like, Emperor Palpatine crossed with Hitler, slamming his fist on the table. I think that was Stephen Miller, you know. And the sad fact is, the fact that I'm even talking like this really just kind of lets you know that Trump is like it. I mean, he's not there. Cognitively, he's out to lunch. If you've looked at how he's acting at the G7 and then pulling him away, I don't think it was for Iran. I don't and Trump's actually stating it wasn't. I think it was just if he's around world leaders for too long, the game's up. I think it'll be up at some point. I think they're going to you can't that's as someone who's dealing with a parent in dementia, you can't hide it for long. I mean, it's noticeable, you know. And I think his cognitive issues like that, they don't get better, they just get worse. So before long, it's going to come out, you know. And the thing is, the reason I've lately been putting out pieces and videos and writing and stuff of why we have to hold these institutions accountable is because they're going to pivot when it's too late. When it is past time, and then they're going to pivot. You're not going to see a Joe Biden style pylon with them saying, what about Trump's cognitive decline? Like, you're not going to see that because the corporate media takes their talking points and their cues from right wing media. There's this myth of like a liberal media. It doesn't exist, not in corporate media. If you look at and we're seeing it now more than ever, like Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos. The LA Times is owned by another billionaire. The New York Times has gone over to trying to get right wingers that like their stuff is so soft and corporate-y, and they don't hold Republicans to account at all. Politico is owned by a right-wing billionaire. So is CNN. MSNBC is owned by corporations and billionaires. It's corporate media. Absolutely. There is no, the only liberal media you're going to find are independent contributors on places like Substack. Like Midas Touch, you're going to see it there. You're going to see, Brian Tyler Cohen Heather Cox Richardson, which I mean, I would even hesitate to call Heather Cox Richardson a liberal. I think she's just a good historian, and she follows the facts, and facts tend to line up with liberal ideology these days. I don't think she has a liberally slanted bias. So, but you're not seeing that in corporate media, not at all. At this point, it's either so watered down you can't even suss out what's going on, or they put their thumb on the scale, or in the case of Fox News, and they put their whole fist, on the scale for Trump and MAGA and the GOP. But personally, I think that we've reached an inflection point with that. That it's gone about this. This has gone about as far as it can go at this point. Um, at From here on out, really, you're just gonna there's no this is we're leaving light fascism or authoritarianism, and we're heading into basically hardcore authoritarianism and fascism. And I think if there's a saving grace there, is these people are so freaking incompetent that, I mean, if they're not going to be able to actually carry it out in a nation the size of the United States. It's not going to happen. Um, or let me put it this way: it's increasingly unlikely to happen because, I mean, and the evidence I'm going to cite is, look at the parade right there. I mean, there is no way North Korea, the Soviet Union, any sort of dictatorship lets that kind of parade go. There is no way that there are empty stands. They will bring people in, because the entire point of something like that is to demonstrate this image, this facade of military might to the world. And that's why a lot of those countries are laughing at us, is because that is pure spectacle. That's propaganda. That is what Trump is supposed to accelerate at, is spectacle. And it was a bust. I mean, a complete and abject failure. And I mean, honestly, I think 2016 Trump might have pulled off a semblance of that, even with his followers and the enthusiasm. You're not seeing that anymore, right? And that's the thing you've got to really you've got to be careful of, because what you'll see online is, you'll see this, either bots or foreign accounts, all that stuff, pushing out this narrative like, oh, MAGA strong, MAGA's this, MAGA's that. No, they're not, because they would have been in DC. They would have done everything they could to counter the narrative, visually, with the No Kings protest, and it's not even close. Oh yeah, the squeaky tank was just like, wow. And the thing is, those tanks squeak, you know, but there's no cheering, there's no bellicosity, there was no, and that's the thing, is you would get that with coordination, right? A good propagandist would be like, "All right, man, when the tanks roll down," or they wouldn't have risked it. They would have said, "You know what? We're going to put the tanks on flatbeds. We're going to have, it's going to look even bigger. So we'll get, the green truck, and it's got the flatbed, and we'll have the tanks and towing them. And it's like, yeah, and it's like we'll have the air show and all this noise, and people will be cheering. We'll have people, trying to get the crowd up, like all that stuff." And it wasn't there. It just absolutely wasn't. And, you can read into a lot of that, because this is something that is supposed to be a layup. And people say, well, they only had 2 months. It's like, sure, but you have the resources of the entire federal government, or you're supposed to, and you can't get it done. Oh, that's right. You fired a bunch of people. So the people that can get it done, they're out of a job, or they're not willing to help you. you know? So, yeah. I mean, spent $45 million on that, and that's what we got, you know? So, yeah. I mean, so there you go. But well, I mean, yeah, Cat, they have been brainwashing people with QAnon since 2016. Uh, but the hard part with that stuff is eventually you gotta pay it off, you know? Like, that's kinda why Glenn for those of you who remember Glenn Beck from '08, when he used to have his little, whiteboard or his little chalkboard or whatever, and he would do the, like, "It's about respect, RES, Republicans," and then, like, he'd do his little anagram stuff. Um, and at some point, you've gotta start paying that stuff off, right? Um, that's why Glenn Beck's no longer on Fox News because he kept talking about doom and gloom, doom and gloom, doom and gloom. I mean, way further, you know, than Trump talks about, and it never materialized. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, when is this supposedly going to happen? Um, Trump is kind of an anomaly because for whatever reason, like everybody sort of sees whatever they want to see in him. It's weird. And I'm sure people, psychologists and historians are going to study this for decades, if not more, when after he's gone. That you know, people see him as some kind of alpha male. The guys who really are all about that, or they see him as a good businessman when everything in his past, none of that's true. Um, I'm curious. I'm actually curious to see who, you know, and yeah, no, like, yeah, like, I mean, I've got. It's funny. I have an uncle that has a law degree, and he was a smart dude, and but he was a Republican, and he's in a red state, and he actually got pretty high up in the state party, uh, and he's gone completely around the bend. He's still like I've blocked him on almost all social media, and he's chased me to Substack. And, he'll email me every once in a while and tell me about why I'm wrong or, how I'm going to help Republicans in the midterms. And it's insane. Like, it's Looney Tunes kind of stuff where you're looking at that going, dude, do you like have any sort of values and principles anymore? And it's just, yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Kat. I absolutely think it's a conditioned response. I think it is just something that they they're just looking for you to get upset, you know. And it doesn't really upset me anymore. It's just, I mean, because that's why I'm sort of at a place where, like, I see Joe Walsh trying to essentially do kind of deprogramming stuff, where he's trying because he was once Tea Party. I mean, he was a congressman. He was Tea Partier. But you know, my thing is like I'm more of the school of you have to mobilize your base and basically defeat these people. They're always going to be here. Like they will always like be here. I'm glad there's people like Joe that are trying to do that work and pull them one at a time or speaking to that crowd because I think there are slivers you can get that will make a difference. Um, but yeah, I don't. I like for me, it's just like no, get the people on the fence, mobilize your base, and you just like this notion. It plays into this notion like we're so divided. We've always been divided. We like that's always been us as a nation. We've always been divided. Unless it's a really huge thing but for most of our history, we've been divided. That's democracy. That's kind of how it works. So um Tom asked me what I think about Democratic politicians being handcuffed in LA and New York. I believe it was one of the gentlemen, I get his name wrong. Is it Landis or Lands? I think he's running for mayor. And he was at an immigration hearing today, and they handcuffed him because they wouldn't show themselves. They wouldn't show a warrant. They weren't wearing anything identifying, because God only knows if they're all like Jan Sixers or whoever they are, you know. Um, and I don't. I on Lander. Yeah, there you go. I don't think he's. I don't think they're doing these ICE agents. They're not doing this lawfully, but they don't care, because they understand that by the time the courts and everybody catches up and that they're forced to actually undo everything, they're going to have already done it. And so it's not really going to matter. So, but honestly, like, so there's two sides. I think it's very dangerous, and I think it's horrible that they're doing this, but I think people need to see it, because if I were to say, "Oh man, they're going to lock us up. They're going to start locking up Democrats." You know, they're gonna, like, if your party affiliation, you're like, you got a target on your back. I'm going to sound like a crazy person if I'd have said that, say, 6 years ago. But you look at what they're potentially doing with the VA, where they're, with an executive order, they can refuse treatment or service if they don't like the party affiliation you adhere to, you know, and they can even make an assumption about that now. Or you look at the crazy person with Vance, whatever his name was, targeting those two lawmakers and their families, their spouses in Minnesota. And, you know, of course, Trump hasn't called Waltz and he insulted him, because, again, that is the right's MO. Um, like the Bulwark, I'm trying to remember his last name. So he had a piece, and he said something pretty, like, you know, um, he said something where he said, "Yeah, man, I was kind of relieved that it wasn't one of ours, and I was, we got to get out of that. We got to bring the temperature down. We got to." And the thing about I would say about that is, and I hate this line of thinking, is anybody who's dealt with a narcissist or dealt with horrible people, and they're good people and they're empathetic people, they always ask themselves, "Well, what more can I be doing? What more can I do? How can I try to help bring the temperature down?" And the thing is, it's not us. I'm just gonna be upfront about it. I'm not wishing for violence on Republicans, period. But and I don't use violent rhetoric. I use rhetoric and stuff of consequences of what's probably going to happen, and I try to keep it in fact-based reality, like I think any good liberal or anybody on the left should. But this false equivalence crap of, "Oh, well, oh, yeah. Well, all these Republicans, they're," no, they know what's happening. They know. Well, they're scared. No, 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 no. They just like the MAGA, like people that voted for Trump, whether they're MAGA or not, they just didn't think it would affect them. Or the politicians they don't care as long as they can hang on to power. That's all they care about. And that's the problem, is they absolutely know what's going on. They know that Trump's rhetoric and everything that he does is geared towards giving permission to people that cause violence. And yeah, it's no wonder the guy's a Trump supporter. Of course he is. He was absolutely a Trump supporter, because they're bathed in that rhetoric every day. That's how these extremist groups work, right? Is it's the same. QAnon has the same model, right? You're brought into it step by step. You're radicalized step by step. most people get off the ladder at some point, right? So you take QAnon. Most people are brought into it, um, where it's like, hey, they're trafficking children. Oh my god! Like, and if you're a normal, you know, human being, you're gonna be like, oh my god, that's terrible. Who's trafficking children? Like, what's going on? Like, this is awful. And so then it's like, oh well, there's a cabal of elites that are doing. Oh, dude, that's messed up. Like, where's the evidence for that? You know, um, but what they let you do is they let you fill in the gaps, right? And so as you go down this rabbit hole, when you accept every step along the way, pretty soon you start believing that, oh, it's Hollywood elites. Now again, that's not hard to believe because Hollywood is rife with, I mean, the Me Too movement started pretty much there, right? Harvey Weinstein, all this stuff. Like, so it's not hard to believe that, oh, there's abuse going on in Hollywood. Well, of course there is, right? It's, you've got desperate people, desperate, good looking people, and who want to get famous, want to get money, and there's people that are going to take advantage of that. So the problem ends up is you start going down the rabbit hole too far, right? You end up outside of a pizza place in in Northern Virginia thinking that, that's a site for trafficking. And you got a firearm or an assault rifle, and before you know it, it's like you're trying to find a basement. They're like, dude, there's no basement here. And you got cops surrounding the place, and you're looking like and you're like, oh, I'm a freaking moron. I've been lied to. Now that guy, I don't think he killed anybody. But this guy here, like, oh yeah, he was probably unbalanced and believed it. Reportedly he was an evangelical. He's probably bathed in all this manosphere, evangelical, they're killing babies, all this crap. And so, he's tricking out a police van, he's got a target list, he's wearing a mask and he's going around killing people. You and reportedly he went to two other houses and they weren't there. And what's Trump's response? Oh, I'm not calling Tim Walz. He's a jerk. So again, they radicalize. They know there's these crazies out there. They know there's these unhinged people. They're counting on those people being radicalized. It's there to spread fear. Same thing with ICE arresting Democratic lawmakers because they're hoping that people don't stand up to this. But if no king showed us anything, right? If no king showed us anything, look how many people are willing to stand up. And they're terrified of that because that's how you defeat fascism. That's how you defeat authoritarianism. Because every time those governments were toppled except by an outside source, it was done through a popular uprising. You look at the Velvet Revolution that happened in the Czech Republic in Prague. You look at you look at with Zelensky in Ukraine. Putin wanted his little puppet in there, and the people were like, "No, putting this guy won. Screw you!" And they ran him out of the country. You know, and that was by Paul Manafort got that Putin's puppet elected, and then of course he joined the Trump team, and that's where the Russia connection came from. So, and all this is out there, and they know it because the Senate Committee on Intelligence that was at the time led by Republicans. You can go look this up. They said there absolutely was influence on the Trump campaign from Russia. Ron Johnson, it's in the report. They said it. Heather Cox Richardson had a huge write up about it. It's there for anybody to see, But again, did corporate media run with it? No. Was it something that you even heard about in the lead up of the 2024 election? No. Not at all. And again, that's how these institutions put their thumb on the scale. And once it all comes crashing down, after they've gotten their tax cuts, they're gonna be like, "Oh, we didn't know. Oh, we were all duped just like you." No, you weren't. 100%. You weren't, you know? And that's why we're gonna have to push for democratic leadership that's gonna hold these people accountable. That's gonna be part of the bargain. Like, we're going to have to convince people that, because again, people are just gonna wanna get back to normal. They're like, "Man, I'm gonna want," it's like, "Okay, I want cheaper grocery prices. Man, I want my rent to come down." And we might get some of that. We might get a little bit of just, they might give us a little bit more, just a little bit more to keep us hanging on, you know? But we're gonna have to push and say, "No, uh-uh." We want the end of gerrymandering. It's done. Like, it's gotta be done. It's gotta be illegal. It's gotta go. So we can get rid of MAGA and we can get rid of the extremists. We've gotta have our votes protected. So all these voter suppression laws, which are like in 22 states, which are coincidentally mostly red states, they gotta go. We have to make the Voting Rights Act, which is still on the books, apply to all the states, because that's how the Supreme Court was able to strike it down. They said, "Oh, well, it doesn't apply to all the states." So all we got to do is pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, make the Voting Rights Act 1965, like, 65? The law of the land. That's it. Got to make it apply everywhere. And blue states won't have a problem with that. They'll be like, "Oh, yeah, dude, we're already compliant. We're good." Colorado is mail-in ballots. That's it. Same day voting. You can fill out your ballot, or you can just go to the polling place, like either one. Boom. Easy peasy. I got a ballot at my house. As soon as I come back, I'm going to fill it out, run it to a Dropbox, and it's going to get counted. I get email notifications saying, "Yep, your ballot's been counted." It's a local election. I get reminders that hey, it's coming up. We sent you your ballot. You need to fill it out. That's how it should be for everybody. We should make democracy easy, but we don't, because that's the thing. This nonsense of, "Hey, your vote doesn't matter." Well, if it didn't matter, then why do they make it so damn hard for you to vote? Because it does matter. So do the No Kings protests. So does pushing on our side to say, "Hey, we need to hold these people accountable. There's no, we need to move on for the good of the nation. We need to do this." No, 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 no. It's like, no. So we have to push for these things. When it fails, when this American fascism fails, and it is going to be painful before it gets there. We're going to have people arrested. You know, I don't know lands in New York, like, there's other candidates I might like more, but I'm gonna tell you right now, like, if I was in a Democratic primary, I'd be like, "He got arrested for the cause? Oh, he's got my vote." That's it. I mean, for me, I'm like, "Oh, he got arrested? He stood up to freaking fascists? Okay. Yeah, you got my vote, bro." No. I'm gonna be a pain in your ass and try to push you to, you know, go a little further left, but oh yeah, no, I'll back you up. You know, I was done with Gavin Newsom. I was like, man, when he did his podcast with Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon, I was like, bro, you know, and this whole thing I can't stand with Democratic politicians were like, well, with I understand with the trans stuff and sports athletes. I'm like, no, 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 dude, no. There's a reason that all civil rights has to be for everyone, and we have to support everyone, because they try to slice it off, and then when it gets to us, you know, they go after LGBTQ, they go after women's right over their, over body autonomy, and then before you know it, they're starting to say, well, they can discriminate against you because you're a registered Democrat. That's how they do it. So it's like, I don't care if you like. For me, I'm like, it's like, well, uh trans people, that's just kind of gross. It's like, well, I'm sure they're not, too thrilled about you either, bro. But this is America. I'll support their right to choose what they want to do with themselves. You don't have to like it. You just have to support it. It's like, I support the principle. There it is. Easy, you know, period. So, but yeah, I mean, Trump, this Iran thing, I don't know how that's going to shape out. I mean, like, I think Israel, like, I think Israel was doing a little bit of wagging the dog for Netanyahu, and they definitely got in over their head. I think they played Trump because they're trying to pull him into this quagmire. Like, and that's what BB's been doing with Trump ever since. Like, he's another one that's playing Trump and the Republicans like a fiddle. Like, you know, like the Gaza thing, all that. Um, I think Biden. I mean, I think that was probably a misstep with Biden. I think he should have been tougher on Israel. I think that was a miscalculation. Um, but you know, like, I mean, it's kind of hard to quarterback something like that. And I don't mean to be, I don't mean to, be disingenuous with that. But all situations are fluid and moving. And as you get further out from the October attack that Hamas committed, and then now we're at like, actual ethnic cleansing, it's like, fuck, man. Yeah. It's so, and now they're taking shots at Iran, which they were taking shots at Lebanon. I personally think neither Iran nor Israel wants a war. I think it's just a lot of like they're trading shots back and forth. But the problem is these things have a tendency to escalate, you know, and so who knows where that's going to go. I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, like it depends on how much the hawks who want to invade Iran, and there are crazies, have Trump's ear. I don't think there's a lot that are left that do. I know John Bolton was a big cheerleader for that. Like, he wanted to invade Iran like so bad. Wrote a whole book about it. But, like, it's funny when John Bolton's like, that guy's an idiot. It's like, dude, you're not a freaking smart guy either. So, I mean, if John Bolton's calling you an idiot, man, you messed up. So, like, at least I can have a conversation with John Bolton. I can't have a conversation with Trump, not even more like, I'm not even talking morally. I'm just like, or any kind of Trump supporter like Marge Taylor Greene. Like, they're all freaking morons, you know. Like, I mean, just out and out, like, don't understand nothing. So we'll see how the Iran situation plays out. Like, that's a tough one. That's a real tough one. I hope there's some kind of like de-escalation, because I mean, a war with Iran, that it's not like rolling into Iraq. Because you got to remember, we rolled into Iraq. We basically had troops stationed there and no fly zones and all that other stuff ever since the end of the Gulf War in the 90s. So we've been there for like 13 years, like over 10 years, long time. That's not the situation with Iran. And Iran has a much larger population. So, um, yeah, it wouldn't be just a walk in the park like Afghanistan or Iraq, which those weren't walks in the park. And a lot of the casualties happened with the insurgencies. I don't know what would happen with this one. And the nature of warfare has kind of changed by this point, especially with looking at Ukraine. Like, drone warfare has shifted the battlefield on the way modern wars are fought now. I mean, Russia's taken estimates are 1 million casualties. That's not dead. That's dead and wounded, but man, that's a lot. And I mean, these drones and the Bradleys that they've gotten from us have just rendered the Russian tanks obsolete. It's just it's a slaughter factory up, you know, in Ukraine. So I don't know. I don't know with the Iranian thing. It's kind of terrifying because, you know, a rational president would de-escalate this thing. Would basically like, you know, like there's no way that the Israelis informed. They informed the US after the fact, but I guarantee they didn't do it beforehand. I mean, how could you? It's like chances are it's going to get leaked to somebody. Yeah. So, yeah. Um but I mean, I don't know. Uh the thing that would scare me with an overseas adventure like that is the economic the economic problems that have already been sown are going to hit around September, October. And I don't know what that's going to do. Because we have multiple economic fronts that do not look good. Tourism, home, like the volume of homes that are for sale, um, farmers that have lost uh, their trade agreements with China, their licenses, which I mean, that's like the basically the three major soybean licenses that come from China to the US. China pulled all those about a month ago. So unless those farmers like have um like they have somewhere to sell that excess crop, it's not looking good. I mean, Brazil already took. They went from 14% to like 40 to 42. It's in the 40s from the first trade war, and they're going to pick up more, and so are other countries. You know, um, yeah, I don't know. You know, I really don't know. Like, I think the domestic front doesn't look good, and if they pass this quote big beautiful bill and go to war, like that's gonna be a big problem. Yeah. Um, I don't know if we'll get kicked out of the G7, but you're gonna see a lot of overseas investors pulling out of our bonds, and that's not gonna be good. So the price of oil will go up almost assuredly. So that honestly might be the saving grace. If there's a saving grace to all this, it's the price of oil because oil and energy keeping it low because right it spiked to about $70 a barrel to 80. Trump needs that to be around 50 to 60. He needs to keep it there because with all this tariff crap, everything else is going to be bad in our economy. Probably, I mean, potentially, um, everything's going to slow down. But if there's cheap gas, they can point and say, "Well, look, gas is cheap," you know, and food costs might come down simply because farmers don't like this year. Because again, pork farmers, dairy, row crops, that kind of stuff, that will come down simply because they don't have anywhere else to sell it. Now they're all going to go bankrupt, and it's like we're going to have a huge problem the next year because you're not going to have as much people, making that food, and we'll have to import it, which is going to get import taxed. So yeah, that might be a problem next year. So, but yeah, if fuel goes up, then everything else goes up on top of the tariffs, and that makes it so much worse. So, um, yeah, you know, so honestly, if suddenly there's peace between Iran and Israel, it might just be because of that, because a war there is going to definitely spike fuel costs, and without Russia to sort of make up that shortfall, especially when they're currently in a conflict with Ukraine, and their refinery capacity got hit as well. Yeah, that's just bad news. So, but again, people like these leaders are freaking stupid. So who knows? Um, but all this stuff is outside of our control. You know, like you can't sit here, you can't sit and worry about it and stew about it. You know, it's good to be prepared about it. It's good to, uh, hey, this might come down. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? Um, yeah, he is doing a bang up job. He really is, Janine. But yeah, so I mean, it's kind of like, what can you do about it? Well, you know, um, I mean, honestly, is just kind of just wait and see what happens. American oil production. Um, I mean, the thing about it is like we already are producing, as much as we possibly can. Like, and so and the hard part about it is too is like it's kind of a catch-22, right? With that, because if you drill, baby, drill, that lowers the price per barrel. That's great for us. That's not great for the oil producers, right? You know. Now, so the famous example was when the war in Ukraine really started kicking off. What Biden did was he released the uh, our reserves, our strategic reserves, and so basically sold it to the oil companies, and he sold it at a profit. And then when it dropped, he restocked it. So with Biden, we actually made, like, the American taxpayers actually made money. You know, so like if you want a business president, Biden Obama actually did a great job. If you remember with Obama, he had a program which is like cash for clunkers. Like, oh yeah, massive economic stimulus. You know, like made money on that, and it was great program. But again, that's Democrats. Not Republicans. Republicans, their only business acumen is like, well, let's just give more money to rich people. If we give it to rich people, we'll be good. No. So yeah. Um, but I mean, it's if there's one takeaway, if I'm hopeful about anything, like all the things they're doing look like desperation. It doesn't look like a fascistic entity um that's serious. And with Trump and his cognitive decline, man, I just don't see it, man. I don't see this. Like, I don't even know at this point if he's going to make it through the whole term. Um, I don't like. Oh yeah, I absolutely think it's an extinction burst. Now what that looks like for us on the ground, it's going to be messy. Infrastructure, I don't know. You know, like with Vance, I mean, I think he's going to bend over for Peter Thiel, and they're going to get a lot of contracts. I mean, I think they would be stupid to try to rig the elections, or like basically suppress the vote. They might try to rig them. That may happen. I don't know how that would happen, but suppressing the vote with the turnout they just saw, oh man, yeah, you know, I mean, one general strike, and I mean that's the thing. The thing about our Constitution is each state sort of administers its own electoral process. So they would literally have to send in people to administer the election. So we would know well in advance before a 2024 election and before a 2022 election. And to be honest, I think I honestly think those people that are MAGA are gonna let this like, they're not going to try to they're not gonna try to suppress an election because if you do, then you really are showing them who you are, and that's the kinda thing that gets you hung or put in prison for treason for life. But, if you just let them go ahead and the Republicans get wiped out in the House and maybe the Senate flips, you still have the presidency, you still have the Supreme Court, you know, and then what you like, you get to be what every Republican likes to do is, well, it's not on you anymore, right? You don't have to make laws. You don't have to actually do the hard part of leading and compromise. You can just throw bombs at Democrats, and then suddenly everything's the Democrats' fault. You know, all those tariffs that the Democrats passed, those were all Trump. No, you guys passed them. It'll be that kind of dumb stuff. Where their followers are like, here's money. Democrats are dumb. So that's sort of my sort of cynicism about, like, no, I don't like they don't have to suppress elections. Why would you do that? Just let people vote and then, you have all these news networks, they're just gonna blame us, for things we didn't even do. They're still blaming Joe Biden. You know, Trump's damn near been in office for 6 months. You know, like it'll be 6 months next month. So it's 5 months, and they're still blaming Joe Biden after all the things they're doing now. Because it works. It works for until the hard part. The hard part we're going to have to do is get rid of these institute and I think they're getting rid of themselves because people are just not wanting to tune into that stuff. So, um, like, so no, I'm not doom and gloom about things, but this is going to be a generational unfucking, really, and that's part of progress. You know, I mean, we've taken some steps backwards, but you know, I mean, in some ways we've taken some steps forward too. I've never seen, and that's part of that's the give and take. That's the sort of double-edged sword of things, you know. So we'll see, but I don't know. I'm oddly optimistic. I mean, No Kings has me more optimistic. That kind of turnout, that kind of, and that's kind of typical for human behavior. It's like, it's like, oh, we told you this is coming, but it's not until it's upon you. Then it's like, oh God, we got to do something. And that's kind of, you know, that's kind of how it goes. So, um, anyway, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much. And, thank you for jumping in on this Taco Tuesday. I hope to I mean, you know, I'd love for Trump to prove me wrong where I could come on and say, well, he actually did a good job this week, but I don't think I'm in any danger of that. So anyway, I appreciate y'all. So y'all have a good day. And hopefully I'll be back for Friday for week wrap up. If not Saturday, I'm gonna see if I can get a special guest on. Anyway, thanks again. I'll see y'all later. Bye bye.